Hey everyone, these are my choices for the top 15 funniest TAS videos. Now, if you're not entirely sure what a TAS is, let me give you a very brief idea. Don't worry, I'll keep it short and fun. TAS stands for Tool Assisted Speedrun, or Tool Assisted Super Play, since they're not always speedruns per se, and why change a perfectly good acronym? Now, most speedruns are done by a player who practices really hard until they can beat the game exceptionally fast. Tool-assisted speedruns, on the other hand, have nothing to do with player skill or reflexes, and are a matter of meticulous planning, trial, and error. Using emulator tools such as save states and slow motion, players can reload states and retry any mistake, no matter how minor, not to simply make games easier to beat. Utter perfection is the goal. The end result of all of this experimentation can be jaw-dropping, as if watching someone play the game with superhuman reflexes and complete mastery of the game, blazing through at maximum speed and executing almost impossible stunts. Video games, like all computer programs, are made in such a way that they will always execute exactly the same way as long as the user does everything exactly the same way. So even things that appear to be totally random all follow a set of very specific rules. As such, even luck can be manipulated. Every die roll, slot machine, or random item dropped by an enemy can be manipulated just by knowing the exact frame to press the right button. While mostly this is all done to make speedruns as fast as possible, some people have used it just to complete the game in really wacky ways. Like manipulating the bad guys into all saying the exact same line every time.
You can't shoot me. You can't shoot me.
Just remember, this is not like using Game Genie or cheat codes. You're not hacking the game to make it work however you want. Everything you see done in a task is done entirely with normal button presses timed perfectly. Every task could theoretically be done with a real controller if you were just, well, impossibly good at it. And keeping that in mind just makes these all the more mind-blowing and funny. This one's really short, so allow me to show you the run in its entirety. Player Nitrogenesis beats the game in just 18 seconds with perfectly timed web slinging and glitching his way through a wall straight to the final boss, ending with a hilariously anticlimactic battle where Mysterio just drops onto some high voltage and BAM! The comedy timing is amazing. Spider-Man zips along at breakneck speed, then just kind of sits there. Some awkward fumbling later with no fanfare, suddenly a gigantic drawing of Peter Parker's hilariously weird face. You win! This would be a fairly normal task until this part, which I'm not even sure how to set up or even explain. Just look at the map screen. Double Dragon 2 has 3 modes of play. 1 player, 2 player, and a second 2-player mode where the characters can hurt each other. Player Idelicat takes advantage of this by playing both players simultaneously and having the characters beat each other up. Sometimes just for the fun of it to kill time whenever there's nothing else to do, but other times having them do jumping super knee smashes to launch each other across the map, because it's faster than walking. And funnier. Tony Hawk games seem like a pretty good choice for tool-assisted mayhem. Executing lots of skateboard tricks flawlessly in the blink of an eye? Down. But the Underground games in particular make this even more nutty because they have a huge number of side quests with a gigantic cast of bizarre characters. This makes it especially confusing and hilarious for those who are only vaguely familiar with this game, because what you get is rapid-fire changes from impossibly fast skateboarding tricks to suddenly turning into Benjamin Franklin or Bigfoot, and then switching back with no warning and completing entire stages in seconds. Certain games, especially for NES and SNES, don't really know how to handle the player pressing both left and right, or both up and down at the same time. On a standard controller, it's impossible. The D-pad is designed to rock back and forth, so only one direction on each axis can be input. But of course, if you had a special controller, or broke a regular controller and forced it to go in opposite directions at the same time, there are a lot of games you can trick into exhibiting all kinds of weird behaviors. In A Link to the Past, this means in certain areas the game will let you phase through stairs, and from then on you can just walk between the walls. Player Omnipotent Entity first used this trick to bypass almost the entire game, but later the user known as Tompa improved on it even more. Link doesn't even bother to grab the sword this time, or any items really other than a single rupee, then does... what? And then he's in the wall. The camera tries to follow, but Link is now completely on a different floor of the castle. And then, end credits. Yes, Link just walked right past everyone, seized the Triforce, and won the game in only a few minutes without swinging his sword even once. Now, you'd think doing a task of a baseball game would be pretty boring. I mean, no matter how good you are, you still have to slog through 9 full innings, right? Well, not really. Actually, a lot of baseball video games have a mercy rule, where if one team is ahead by a certain number of runs at the end of an inning, it just calls it and declares a winner. So all Idelicat here has to do is score 12 runs in the first inning, then get a slick triple play and the game's over. How does he get those 12 runs? Well, aside from a few home runs, including a grand slam, he manipulates the computer players into making bizarre decisions, like slowly chasing after a rolling ball long enough for the batter to round all 4 bases, or throw to an empty base and straight into the outfield. Then he actually manages to abuse a glitch by rapidly pausing and unpausing the game in such a way that the pitcher gets stuck in the wrong part of the screen, so it's impossible for him to pitch into the strike zone. While the game slowly tries to readjust the pitcher to the correct spot, multiple runners are walked, and with the bases loaded, runs are being scored automatically. And then the pitcher can't help but hit the batter, scoring yet another run for the other team. Then, after securing those 12 runs in the bottom of the first inning, how does Idelicat's team get that triple play? By somehow manipulating the runners into just standing there and getting tagged out. Street Fighter II Rainbow Edition isn't a real Street Fighter game, and it's not even the real name for it. See, when Street Fighter II was popular, some bootleggers would make illegally modified versions of the game and sell them to arcades. They would do things like make the moves more powerful by having the sprites move faster or further, or have them inappropriately shoot fireballs. This didn't exactly make the game more balanced. In fact, sometimes it made the games unplayable. And due to all the meddling around with the code, there tended to be all kinds of weird glitches. This hacked version of Champion Edition became known as Rainbow Edition because the title screen palette is so botched, it looks like a rainbow. So naturally, because this version is so glitchy, and because it has a special added ability to change your character mid-fight, it makes for a much more fun and varied task. So when the player Error 1 chose to do a task of Rainbow Edition, it led to some hilariously weird moments such as this. And this. Good times. You might know Brain Age as that game where you play Sudoku and do other mini-games, supposedly to train your brain. So, this is kind of a head-scratching game to do tool-assisted. What's the fun in seeing Sudoku getting solved really fast? That's just watching someone write numbers. Well, they don't. The author, Ryuto, just plays the game where you have to do fast math. But not in the way you'd expect. What he does is abuse the stylus's pattern recognition system by drawing pictures of Nintendo characters, and doing it in such a way that it makes the game think he wrote the correct number instead. And of course, this being tool-assisted, it's done at such a speed that you can barely keep up with all the drawings, which just makes it this really funny turbo art gallery that's interpreted as the correct answers to math questions. The idea behind A Boy and His Blob is that you carry a bunch of jelly beans that give your blob friend special abilities when he eats them. He can turn into a ladder, trampoline, rocket, even a hole in the ground. He returns back to normal when you whistle. 3 players collaborated on this speedrun, where the hero manages to turn the blob into a hole and whistle while still passing through him, at the precise moment that ends up with him stuck in the wall, allowing him to access part of the maps that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And then he runs through the credits? Wait, that's how they programmed the game? The credits are just a room on the map? Then he ends up in the final boss room, but the boss isn't even there. Oh, there he is. Just had to exit and re-enter to spawn the boss. No, wait, we're leaving again. Then the whole screen gets utterly destroyed, and he wins! If you don't know Circle of the Moon that well, it's a Game Boy Advance game similar to Symphony of the Night, with the unique feature being that you can collect a bunch of cards that have special abilities. To activate them, you need to pick 2 cards, one from each row, and each combination creates one of up to 100 different unique effects. Ogre Slayer starts the game and manipulates luck so that the very first enemy drops a card, and then an enemy a few steps away drops a second card. Now that he has one from each row, he activates them, and at the precise right moment, he pauses in the middle of activation and selects 2 cards he doesn't have, tricking the game into activating those as if he had them. This ability, used in precisely the right time and place, causes him to get pushed right through a wall and straight to the final boss. Or rather, in the ceiling above the final boss. He then activates another pair of cards he doesn't have before the dialogue starts, and triggers an extremely powerful attack that kills Dracula during a cutscene, and he immediately levels up 24 times.
Brutal road. So you ready to get rolling? Start out by knocking out the stuff that'll come and see me when you're ready to move on.
Hey, you found me. You ever seen Escape? How's this sound? What's happening, Slick? Heads up, Chief. Here it comes. Now bust a big combo.
I'll invent a move called the Franklin.